All right, so somebody recently asked me how I became so green. And I really had to stop and think about that for a moment because I couldn't pinpoint a specific event or a specific experience that contributed to me living the lifestyle that I am. But I do know one thing. When my friends were dressing up as Tinkerbell for Halloween, I was dressing up as a recycling bin. So I know that it started at a young age. I've always been concerned about the environment, and I've often been called an environmental bulldog. And I wasn't shy to share my opinion, and I wasn't shy to challenge a professor who had printed our course outline on single-sided paper, for example. But I knew that I needed to be doing a bit more. I knew that I needed to not just be talking the talk, I needed to be walking the talk. So I started with small actions, like bringing a reusable water bottle everywhere I went, or bringing a reusable coffee cup. And there was okay, I gotta really put my arm out. Okay, there we go. But there actually was one moment in time where I was forced to think about how I could live a greener life. And that was the summer of 2009. And some of you may remember, I can still remember the smell. The garbage strike, the Toronto garbage strike, which lasted 36 days. 36 days in the dead heat of summer. And like many Torontonians, I was forced to look at and to analyze the garbage that I was producing. And in that moment, I decided that I could and should do more, because I could also see the garbage that was collecting at my local park. I could see it and I could smell it. So that's a picture of Christie Pitts. And so I decided to do some research. And I found out that Canadians produce the most amount of garbage out of any country in the world. So in 2009, there was a study, and it showed that the average Canadian produced 777 kilograms of waste per year. So for those of you that still think in imperial, that is more than 1,700 pounds of garbage per person per year. So that is huge. And those statistics actually kind of bummed me out. And I decided to reach out to a friend that was pretty active in the environmental movement. And what she said to me was, I'm actually really glad that you reached out to me because you were one of the main catalysts for pushing me into the environmental movement. I thought to myself, me? My small actions actually contributed to somebody making positive change in their life, somebody joining the environmental movement. And that was the exact motivation that I needed to push me to take steps toward a zero-waste lifestyle. So the first thing that I did was do research on what people were already doing, how they had transformed their lives to have a zero-waste lifestyle. And I came across Bea Johnson and her family of 4. They live in California, and they produce 1 mason jar of garbage a year. 1 mason jar, 4 people, that's it. And boy, was I inspired. So Bea also wrote a book called Zero Waste Home. And in that book, she talks about the 5 R's. And you might be thinking, 5? I only know 3. Well, Bea includes 2 others. And those 5 R's are refuse what you don't need, reduce what you do need, reuse what you actually consume, recycle what you can't refuse, reduce, or reuse, and finally, rot, so compost the rest. And these 5 R's have really helped me to reduce the waste that I produce. So the first R. The first R is refuse. Refuse what you do not need. And this is about learning how to say, no thank you, I don't need that. So I was at an educational conference about a month ago, and when I registered, I received a goodie bag or a swag bag. And my initial reaction was to take that bag and be like, ooh, free stuff. And then I got it back to my hotel room, and I looked inside, and I realized I didn't need any of it. I didn't even need the bag. So I had to remind myself that I needed to say, no thank you, which is exactly what I did when I brought it back to the registration table. So the easiest way to refuse is to refuse single-use plastic. That is plastic we use only once, that often isn't recyclable or doesn't get recycled and isn't biodegradable often. So that includes plastic bags, plastic cups, plastic lids, cutlery, and straws. So that is somewhere that you can start. And it does take a little bit of planning. So for me, when I leave my house, I always have my zero waste kit, which includes a cloth shopping bag, reusable water bottle or coffee mug, bamboo cutlery, a glass straw, a cloth napkin, and a mason jar or a container, which is actually really convenient when you go to restaurants because then you get to keep all the leftovers. So I really encourage you to think about how you can say no thank you. Because every flyer and every pen and every single-use straw that you use or you accept creates a demand for more. So I recommend that when you're at a restaurant and you're ordering a drink, you just need to say, no straw, please. Or when you go to a coffee shop and you know you're going to hang out with your friends and you know you're going to sit down, just remember to say, for here, please. And those actions can decrease significantly the amount of waste that you produce. The second R is reduce, and this is about reducing what you do need. It is about simplifying your life. It is about quality versus quantity. It is about experiences versus stuff. And it actually makes cleaning so much easier because you have so much less to dust and organize. But it's also about reducing and being an informed consumer. So what that means is when you purchase things that you can't refuse, that you actually think about the packaging involved. So for example, I no longer buy stamps in a booklet. I buy stamps in a roll to reduce the packaging. I buy soap without packaging and plastic because that plastic is often not even recyclable. I also make all my own toiletries. So that includes toothpaste, that includes lip balm, that includes moisturizer, that includes facial toner, and I reuse the containers and I buy the products in bulk to also reduce packaging. And I have stopped using plastic toothbrushes. I use a bamboo toothbrush, which you can compost. Because I cringe to think about the fact that every single plastic toothbrush that I have used in my life is still on this planet. So, the next R is reuse. So, reuse what you do consume. And the best way, I think, to reuse is to shop in bulk. And when I say shop in bulk, I don't mean going to the grocery store and buying 5 tubs of mayonnaise and not being able to use them before they expire. When I say shop in bulk, I mean you bring your own reusable mason jar, your own reusable container, your own cloth bag to the store to buy your products. And there are actually quite a lot of bulk stores in Toronto that have been allowing people to do this for a long time. But the exciting news in the zero waste world is that Bulk Barn, the biggest bulk store, retail store in the country, has just introduced a reusable container program in all of its stores. So this was a huge win for the zero waste movement. So you can pretty much buy everything you need in bulk. So that includes pasta, nuts, grains, sugar, flour, and maple syrup, which I was really excited when I found that one, and even your favorite junk food can all be found in bulk. So there is one more thing that I want to talk about in terms of reusing. And I don't know if you remember that recycling costume that I showed you at the beginning of the talk. Well, I actually reused that costume the following year and made a new costume. So, reusing at its finest. So, the fourth R is recycle. And it's really important to recycle what you cannot refuse, reduce, or reuse. To do those 3 R's before you actually recycle. And when you do that, there's very little left to recycle, and that's a good thing. So yes, recycling does reduce the amount of energy we have to use, and it does reduce the natural resources that we have to source, but it can't be the only answer. It can't be the way that you are living a green lifestyle. So I really encourage you to think about those 3 R's before you recycle. For example, instead of recycling batteries, think about how you can buy rechargeable batteries or buy a product that doesn't even need a battery in the first place. Or when you go to the coffee shop, bring your reusable mug so you don't have to figure out how to actually recycle a coffee cup on the U of T campus. Because as you can see, each thing has to go in a separate bin. And actually, it's a luxury that we can recycle coffee cups on campus because in the rest of Toronto, you can't even recycle a coffee cup. And the final R is rot. Okay, so that is compost. And basically, it is the recycling of all of the organic material that you use. And in Toronto, we're really lucky that we have a city-wide green bin program because 1/3 of our garbage and 1/3 of our waste is actually organic and should be kept out of the landfills. So I actually have my own backyard compost because I really like the process of adding all of my organic waste in and seeing it decompose, and then eventually adding this nutrient-rich soil back into my garden. So those are the 5 R's. And I really encourage you to start thinking about those as you're living your life. But there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is getting outside. That is spending time in nature. That's falling in love with nature, because that is going to remind you about why those 5 R's are actually important. Why living a green lifestyle or living a zero-waste lifestyle is important. So if you're looking for more tips about how to live a green or zero-waste lifestyle, check out my blog, 50 Shades of Green Toronto. I'm giving you tips for whatever shade of green you want to be. And I want to leave you with a challenge, and that is to take a step. One small step, one small green or one small zero-waste step. And eventually, that step is going to turn into a sustainable habit. And then I encourage you to take another step. And eventually, you will be walking the talk. You will be living your values. And in order for us to have a sustainable future, we all need to be living a greener lifestyle. And that is the way that transformation is going to happen. Thank you.